Welcome to the Think Small podcast, hypergrowth for small businesses. So, what's slowing you down?
Well, hi again, everybody. It's Rob Godlewski with the Think Small podcast. And today our special guest is Betsy Frost. Betsy is the CEO of Q Mixers. Betsy, thanks so much for joining us today on the Think Small podcast. Welcome.
Thanks for having me. I'm so thrilled to be here.
Yeah, so Betsy, first, tell us about the brand Q Mixers. What are you all about, and what exciting things are coming from the brand?
Yeah, well, we are the largest American-born premium mixer brand. So we make things like ginger beer, tonic, club soda, all using the natural ingredients and a real fine eye to create taste balance that brings out, if you're mixing with alcohol, the best flavor within whatever you're mixing with, or if you're mixing without, to create real flavorful mocktails or even drink on its own. So
Oh,
we've been
fantastic.
around. Yeah, we've been around since 2008. You can find us across the country at grocery stores, liquor stores, and your favorite bars and restaurants. And probably are the secret ingredient to your favorite cocktail that you didn't know about. So the brand is Q, the letter Q, and we sit in the mixer aisle. Recently we came out with some new innovation for the entire category called Q Refreshers, which is the first fruit forward sparkling mixer in the category. So, over 50% of ready to drink, whether it's seltzers or ready to drink cocktails, have a fruit profile. And yet there's no easy way to create your own premium concoction at home. And so we launched Q Refreshers. It has electrolytes. It's amazing to mix with, but also to drink on its own for a 2 p.m. treat.
Oh, that's outstanding. So, obviously, the product is available widely in retail
Yep.
environments and online.
Yep.
But is it also available in certain on-premise or bars and restaurants?
Absolutely. We are at bars and restaurants, hotel chains nationwide. We actually just got picked up and are being served on American Airlines, our club and tonic and our margarita mix. So if you're flying American, enjoy a drink on us.
Fantastic. Well, congratulations on that big win.
Thank you. Thank you.
Um, so you've been with the company for a relatively short time, right? Just a
Mhm.
little over a year. Is that correct?
Yep, about a year and a half.
Okay, but you've got a long background in CPG brands and leading businesses in the retail environment.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about your story and what brought Betsy Frost to Q Mixers.
Yeah. Well, I started in kind of tech startup and went to business school after working at a company called The Motley Fool, which was my first real purpose-driven company. And they teach people how to invest for themselves and give them access to research and community. And I had joined The Motley Fool when they were moving from a content company to kind of a direct to consumer company. And I loved it. I loved everything about the way we worked and how we saw the market and connected to consumers. So I went to business school to do that. And while I was there, the head of career was like, go get a big name on your resume.
Hmm.
That will help you down the line, raise money. You can always go small. And I was like, I can do anything for 2 years. That sounds like a great postdoc. And ended up at General Mills, which has a great array of businesses, but really their marketers are the general managers. And so that felt like a good fit for me as a learning ground. And 2 years became 14 years. And so over that time, I
Oh
ran
my
brands,
goodness.
yeah, like Cheerios and Old El Paso and Yoplait, among others. But I also got to start a new products incubator, where the company was trying to disrupt itself. And that became the forerunner to 301 Inc., the investment arm, because the thesis that came out of it was like, maybe we should acquire those instead of build them. But one of the cool things that happened was I created this mentorship program where we connected marketers and R&D folks to entrepreneurs to really
Hmm.
rewire our people. But out of that, it connected my passion for entrepreneurship. And I got to work with a number of founders, and then started advising on the side. So for the last oh gosh, 10 years. I've worked with over 30 founders from pre-revenue up to $1 billion on various strategic growth issues. And then left General Mills to do that on my own and landed in
Interesting.
one of those portfolio companies called Dry Soda out of the Pac Northwest, which was reinventing itself after being in the market for 15 years. It was launched as a non-alcohol alternative back in '05 when the market was pregnancy and recovery. And in 2018, the boom of Sober Curious hit the US and innovation was pouring onto the shelves. And how does the OG reposition itself for growth? And when I came out of Dry, I was like, that was lovely. And I'm never working on a beverage again. It is such a bananas industry. And lo and behold, ended up at a another startup out of Boulder called Hoplark, which is an innovative hop beverage company,
Hmm.
which is just real ingredients brewed to get you a hop tea or a hop water, or they call it Hoplark 00, which would be a 0 calorie, zero sugar, zero alcohol, like NA beer profile.
Okay.
And so that was an amazing ride. And coming out of that, Q was looking for a CEO to come in and help take the brand to the next level, which for me has become just a personal labor of love. The founder, Jordan Silbert, and his co-founder, Ben Carlin, we all went to college together. And Jordan
Oh,
and I
fantastic.
actually worked our first jobs together out of college in economic development in Sonoma County. So to come in and be able to kind of take their vision to the next level is just personally very exciting for me.
It's always good when you're able to connect with people from your professional past and reinvigorate a business with that same passion that you had, as you got to know those folks, early on. That's fantastic.
Exactly. Exactly.
So maybe not speaking, from the standpoint of cube mixers, but in your experience, what I'd love to ask our guests are, talk to me about a time when you faced a business contraction, right?
Yeah.
Sales are down, profits are constrained. How do you navigate a business through a period like that? Not only from a operational side, but from the human side as well, from an employee standpoint.
Yeah. I mean, it's all intertwined, right? Because businesses are actually humans at their core. Even in this day of AI, they will still be start and run by humans who are behind it, and our buyers are humans. I mean, there's two pieces to it. One is you do have to approach everything from a human centric design, but you also need to pull the two apart and understand where the business sits today. And I think the first piece of that is what is really happening and taking an honest eye where nothing is off the table. There are no sacred cows. It is all what is true. And often in smaller companies, when things start going a little bit haywire or get soft, one of the biggest problems is that information tends to be held in silos because you bring in
Mm.
experts to run a division. And often, especially if it's a founder led organization, all the information flows up through a founder and it's not being shared across the board. And so you end up with different versions of the truth. And that is true even in businesses that are very good at sharing information because each each person is seeing what's happening through a different lens. And so the first thing we say is there's no good news, there's no bad news, there's just news. And we need to get the news on the table and understand what we're truly looking at to diagnose what we need to do. Because if you don't know what's going on, then you don't have options. And then the next piece is, what parts of the business are healthy and which are unhealthy, and really being willing to let go of some of the things that may be holding you back, even if they feel like they're the strategic way to go. And so an example of that would be, um, we I was in a business that launched a new product. That new product didn't stick, and they lost a bunch of distribution and core distribution at the same time. So the footprint had been holding the scale of the business together. And as you started to contract some of that distribution, you're starting to look at the business regionally, and it's no longer profitable to hold an East Coast DC with the volume that's coming out of it. And so in that case, what we did is we looked at the portfolio in terms of what's making money and what's losing money. And that can be done geographically. That can be done through the SKU portfolio. That can be done by customers. And that was a really hard decision because we needed to get profitable quick. And as we were losing the base of, the cash conversion cycle of what we could borrow against, everything contracted, and you needed to really figure out where you could make money. And then what does that model look like to be able to make money? And we made a really hard decision to contract from global Whole Foods distribution down into the core 4 regions where 80% of the volume was coming from. Now that's hard because it's hard to get Whole Foods distribution and national distribution. And then to say to the buyer, actually, I don't want that. I want to be focused here so I can focus my resources. I can build some scale regionally, and we can rebuild the core of this business so it's healthy again, and then re-expand it. And so there are some of those hard decisions that have to be made. On the flip side of that, right? So now we're contracting the business purposefully. We're contracting it to get the core healthy, to regrow it. And I say that it's not a callous or flippant thing, particularly if you are out trying to raise money at the same time. The idea of contracting the business is very difficult. But that's like, you're also not going to be able to get money if you're kind of in a slow spot. And so you've got to get the business to a place that it can manage within its resources. And often that requires bringing headcount down. And, in my experience, the best way to handle it is human. I mean, it's not about the people, it's about the business environment. To the extent that you can, if there is money available to give a small severance, I know it's always appreciated, but sometimes it's not even an option. And we just had some candid conversations of not everything under the hood, because a lot of people don't understand the full P&L, and nor do they need to, but explaining the situation, why we can no longer hold the head count, and then one-on-one conversations with people. And then I always, in all of these environments, I've been through 4 major contractions of the workforce, is offering to help with resumes, make contacts. What are you interested in? And opening up my network, the company's network, our board's network, wherever we have friends and family or suppliers who can help, and try to help place people on the way out. Now, the one thing I want to call out in that is that as I've gone through these reductions in headcount, I spend a lot of time making sure that people who are leaving land well. You also have to spend time thinking about how you put attention on the people who are staying, because it is just as hard and traumatic for them, and they're still carrying the bag. And it feels like, well, now I'm taking on all of this other work. And
with potentially less resources.
With less resources. And so the way we have to work changes. The acknowledgement of this is hard. Like, let's come together. What was working? What wasn't? How do we rebuild this as a team to move forward? I had a team where, we went from 60 some odd people down to 7. Major change. Now
that's quite a contraction.
Yeah, we took out a manufacturing facility as part of that. And going back to the 7 and being like, you're the core now. Like, what does it look like to move forward? What is holding you back? Where are your fears? How are you processing all this? And we actually literally wrote down what we were going to leave, and we burned them in a ceremony. We had like a funeral for it. And that helped us kind of reset. We took 2 days to reset and figure out how we wanted to work differently then to move forward. And, that was a big learning and aha for me, as I was spending so much time thinking about the people who were leaving that I almost forgot about the people who were staying, who need just as much help to move through major change.
Okay. So in talking about this example again, but more from the business side, you said if you're making a strategic decision to contract, you mentioned you could do it geographically, more by product line,
Yep.
or by customer.
Yep.
But you were dealing with one specific customer and contracting a portion of the business you sold to that one customer. That inherently, I would think, has a lot of risk in that. What if they said, well, we just don't need you at all?
I've honestly not had that happen because especially a customer like Whole Foods, but there are a number of them of our customers like want us to be successful. They really
Okay.
do. I mean, at the core, like,
So you never got that as a potential
no, I mean,
objection to.
it was a risk that we looked at of like, well, what if we say we only want to be in these regions and they say, well, screw you.
Right. Thanks, but no thanks.
And so we had some scenarios planned around that. But in general, the idea of telling, especially customers that can run their business regionally and like have the ability to have like regional centers, which a lot of the national companies do. I mean, even Walmart, which you wouldn't think of a regional business, will say, no, I don't think that we are performing where we need to perform at this scale. Can we scale back to X hundred stores where we think are our best stores and figure out what's working and then rescale? And in general, buyers are very open to that because they also want their business to be as healthy as possible. And if you're feeling it, they for sure are feeling it.
Okay. Well, good. I'm glad that didn't happen to you. And it sounds like both from an operational side and especially the human side, you really, took a hard look at it. And again, focusing on what it takes to navigate the business forward with the whatever resources and human and operational or otherwise.
Yeah.
So flipping the script on that question, Betsy, is talk to us about a time of rapid growth and expansion, right? And revenue generation. Because you and I both know that the challenges that exist in those periods are sometimes tougher than the ones that you see during a contraction. So tell us about a time when that happened in your career.
Yeah, I mean, I think the key to it is often when that is happening, especially at the beginning of a run. So you've kind of gotten to proof of scale of $10 million where you've had like either a D2C win where you're seeing some wins happening on it, primarily D2C business, or you've gotten a few grocery customers that have provided some scale. And now you're starting to either build distribution really quickly or people want to bring you on or your D2C is expanding even faster. The places that break the first are supply chain and cash. And so a little bit, I've also seen businesses like do this too soon, but the planning for scale can't happen soon enough of the what if scenarios, right? Of what if we double in a year? What if we double in 6 months? Do we have capacity set up that will do that? Can we expand capacity with where we're at? Like where would be in business school, they call them Herbies. Like where are the pinch points within our entire supply chain? And I start with the supply chain because if the supply chain breaks, you have nothing to sell, right? And so the growth will stall and it will stall quickly, particularly if like you're telling someone you're going to expand and then you don't have the product to service that. They'll just be like, see ya. So that's where a customer really walks away, is when you promise something and you can't deliver it. Um, and so the scenario planning around the what ifs and how to get um, things in place before you need them. So, who would you go to? What would be the thing that would trigger a rapid scale or having to add somebody? How much time does that take? And having that kind of planned out on what would happen if this takes off, so you're able to move quicker. When you don't have that in place and you're running after it, you're making bad decisions, you're signing contracts really quickly, startups are failing. And so I've always done it of like the what if plan, and putting a few scenarios in and then knowing kind of where we would go, if we started to see what triggers, and having real conversations of when we invest in that. From a people standpoint, to be honest, in the last like 10 years, what I've seen is that companies have way overhired up front for the
Hmm.
structure they want to be, not the size that they are. And that was possible when there was silly money moving into CPG and venture. And a common use of it was all in headcount. And so during my rapid areas of growth, like we had the headcount there because we were overhired for it. Today, the way that I look at it is like bring in fractional until you're able to take a breath and then truly understand what you need, because you actually don't really need or know what you need from a strategic standpoint during that crazy amount of growth. You're often just throwing bodies at things, and that is not a strategic question of like, who do we actually need on this bus? And so the more kind of fractional help or
Mm.
non-permanent help that you can bring in to like get the hands to get the stuff moving is great. And then taking a moment and stepping back and being like, who do we really need at this moment for this stage is the second piece of it.
Interesting. So scenario planning and
Yep.
supply chain are your two focus areas for those periods of rapid growth. And that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, and access to cash, right? Like people don't think about that either, of like particularly in CPG. A good example would be our American Airlines business, which is a huge win for Q, but it requires a completely different inventory build than what the normal course of business looks like. And the cash conversion on that is very different than the normal course of business. And so uh, we had to make sure that we had access to a different level of cash coming into the year to be able to service that business.
Right. And Betsy, when you say very different, I think you mean it's extended,
Yes,
meaning
the
you're not
the
going to get your cash for a sale for a long period of time.
yeah, and the amount of inventory being built up
Right.
front is significantly different, as well. So um, you know, having, and it takes, I mean, there's ways to get cash quickly, but it's expensive, right? And so the same
Yes.
way as your option planning across the supply chain, you should be having conversations at least on the capital front, because it takes 18 to 24 months, honestly, I mean, quickest 6 months to close capital, but it takes time. And so you need to like put some seeds down to be able to move it when you need to move it, or to raise ahead of it if you're starting to see some signals that are hitting that you're like, oh my gosh, something's about to go.
So let's hear about the business itself, right? Q mixers is a pretty exciting category. And you've recently introduced as new products, as you mentioned, called
Yep.
refreshers, very fruit forward kind of mixers and carbonated drinks. Um, I'm sure that excites your retailers because they have good success with your mixers because they are high quality. They probably are a little bit on the higher end from what they're selling from a day-to-day standpoint. So their profit levels are probably better than their standard products. So I can imagine that the conversations with them are pretty exciting when you introduce this new product line.
Yeah. Yeah.
Talk to us about how that's going.
It's been going great. I mean, I think there's a number of pieces. One was the brand did do a little dip a few years ago, and that
Mm,
was it was really based on things we did to ourselves, all which were very strategically like, yep, I want to figure that out. Like, hey, our packaging could be bolder and stand out more in the category, for example. And so we changed our packaging and our velocity went down day one, pretty dramatically because people couldn't find us. They didn't represent the same benefits. And so our return to innovating is actually a full turn of our values to putting the consumer at the center of everything we do. And so we brought in a packaging refresh this year that really focuses on what the consumers care the most about in the brand. And that led us to refreshers and the white space there of
mm,
what people are looking for. And because they're not finding it, they're mixing with things like sparkling water, where you're like literally watering your drink down. Or they're looking for something that is full flavor without alcohol. And they were not finding it
mm.
in the existing array of what was available. And so following a true consumer first mindset, I think is really what's getting retailers excited because they were tapping into why people shop and what drives them to the store and then what pulls something out of your refrigerator when you bring it home and how does it fit into the occasions and moments. And those conversations where we are now solving not only consumers' needs, but we've listened to what retailers say they want to do with their category. And our innovation and our, execution are solving their needs. That has been a game changer of understanding what your retailer is trying to do with their category. And then what are we doing to help solve those problems? And so the innovation, is, I would say, is a large part of that, but it's part of a broader conversation.
So the focus on the consumer, which I wholeheartedly agree with, by the way, Betsy, in my career as a packaged goods manufacturer and marketer. Um, I find it interesting though that on your website, the refresher products look great, by the way. The packaging is fabulous.
Thank
But
you.
I noticed that the cans are packaged in 7.5 ounces.
Yeah.
Please tell me that had to come from some consumer research. Why is the product sold in the 7.5 ounce can? I've never seen that size can before.
Yeah, the small can is the perfect size for two drinks. So you open a can and half of a can makes a perfect mixed drink. And so it is really sized for mixing. What we have found, particularly with refreshers, which has more refreshment, like it might play in an afternoon occasion, is people like the size. It feels like a little treat, just enough without any leftover. And that
Oh,
you don't feel like you are like packing down those bubbles because particularly for carbonated, some people will let it sit for a while. It gets warm. One of the trademarks of Q is the strong effervescence of the product. We have highly carbonated product that helps it
mm,
stand out or stand up to mixing, whether that's with alcohol or with other things. In fact, there are a few coffee chains that use Q for their sparkling coffee drinks because the Q Club Soda, the Q Sparkling Grapefruit, retains its carbonation better than others in creating sparkling drinks. So, but for a number of people, like they love that pop of carbonation, but 7.5 is perfect. It's a perfect little treat of the entire package.
that's great. And I love how realizations like that come out of listening to your customer.
Yeah,
That's amazing.
absolutely.
So I'm hoping that this is a period of rapid growth as we have been
Yeah.
discussing for Q Mixers. But what does the next, say, 3 to 5 years look like for the brand?
Yeah, I mean, we are going to we're at the beginning, as you said, of kind of a rapid growth cycle. We have a number of, in those planning scenarios planned out of we could end up this way or that way. But really, it's about right now driving household awareness and penetration. The core of growth is going to be bringing new people into the category. Premium mixers only has 5% penetration. Premium spirits has 25% penetration. So just in the inherent gap
Mm,
there, we've got a ton of upside. And so, how do we imprint on people's minds that this is a category that I can use every day and not just on special hosting occasions? And that Q is the best ingredient to mix better every day. And getting into those occasions that actually are becoming more every day. Social drinking isn't just about having an alcoholic drink with a friend on a weekend. Social drinking is non-alcoholic. It is a
that's
moment
very true.
of celebration in the day. It's a 2 p.m., it's a 5 p.m. And so there are a lot more ways to mix it up than there have been in the past. And so we're really focused on helping people celebrate those occasions in different ways moving forward. And then driving discovery where mixer discovery matters. So it matters on a plane because you sit with your can of Q soda or a club soda for a few, for an hour. And you're experiencing the brand. And there are places like that in travel and entertainment where the brand is more forward versus only being an ingredient behind the back bar. And so, really
Interesting.
finding ways to intersect the consumer in a way that's like, oh, gosh, that was like remarkably good.
So brand awareness, closing the gap of acceptability of the category, if you will,
Yep.
clearly some goals of yours. May I ask you, what would be holding you back? What's stopping you from getting there?
Um, we do it on very small budgets, as I think a lot of companies that are our size do. So, working at a General Mills at the beginning of my career, you'd be like, okay, well, like, what's the best campaign to use my media money? And you're like, well, we don't have media money. So, building a brand in modern times is different than building a big brand, right? And so, how do you
Right.
create a meaningful community that is passionate about what you're doing, but also break through in, a very crowded world of social influencers and brands and occasions and things that are happening in a way that's scalable, which, with limited funds doesn't mean that we can go and take over every concert venue or whatever it is. And so being thoughtful about how to drive awareness on smaller budgets, super possible. And a lot of it is about using distribution strategically
Hmm.
and using our footprint in store to tell a better story than maybe we've done before.
Interesting. Well, I certainly hope that your growth trajectory is continues to go up and to the right, as we say.
Thank you.
Make that hockey stick. What last pieces of advice would you have for our audience of small to mid-sized business leaders when they're going through a period of potentially rapid growth?
Yeah. I mean, I think there's a few things. One is as you're going through the rapid growth, how do you hold on to what made the brand or the company special? And it is not that we should always hold on to the total DNA of what it started from, because our job isn't to keep things the same, but it is to keep it grounded in the secret sauce that made it start to work. And that particularly, I think, happens culturally. And it's really easy in times of high growth to lose the essence of what made a culture special or create the spark originally. And how do you make sure that you are investing as much in that as in the external market? Because that's the engine that started it, and it will be the engine that continues it and make sure that it doesn't just peak real quick.
Yeah.
So that would be the first. And then the second is like being like, how do you embrace speed and growth without getting ahead of yourself? And what I mean by that is often when brands hit periods of sustained growth, especially in the beginning of it, where you start to get, the first peak up, and then they overextend, they overskew, they move to other categories. And so how making sure that the thing that you are doing is secure, is self-sustainable, has a trajectory before you push the brand to the next place that it can go.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that you shouldn't, and because innovation is incredibly important, but like, what is the role of that innovation for the brand and for the brand growth? And making sure that the organization can actually add the complexity while maintaining the growth. I think most people add complexity because they're like, we got this, we're going. And then that complexity trips them up and probably slows what would have been a longer run.
I have described that phenomenon as chasing the shiny ball.
Yeah.
Right. Betsy, this has been a great conversation. It's been great to get to know your career path and clearly your leadership of Q Mixers at the moment. Betsy Frost, CEO of Q Mixers, thank you so much for your time and joining us in the Think Small podcast today.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Welcome to the Think Small podcast, hypergrowth for small businesses. So, what's slowing you down?